Yes, he is a
Here,
little
let
bit
me
better,
let you have it back, but I'll stick around.
but not as good as he could.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Well,
Jen.
once they start to, you know, the big corporations,
Welcome
they're
back.
not
Good,
making money,
everybody's
it's a whole
back.
different story.
Okay.
So that's that,
This
you're
is
talking
great.
millions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. We will get back to the programming shortly.
And that, well, I mean, that's a lot of what FAMM does too, right? Like you go to the politicians and you kind of talk about like where resources could go
Yes.
instead, or what policies would actually help.
Yeah, we have to be able to advocate for the policy, explain why this is better than what we've been doing. And when they, you know, we can explain how it's better, but the two things that they claim to is one, they just default to tough on crime.
Right.
And
Law and order.
yeah, but you know, it has gotten them elected and re-elected for decades, so that's their default. It's hard to change that mindset, which events like this are great because, you know, the more we educate the general public on these things too, the more that they can opine to them and say, no, we want to see some changes.
But then you get the guy lobbying to not have those changes.
Yeah, that is true.
But I mean, to create mass incarceration, it was fully a bipartisan effort. And so it's gonna have to be like all the political spectrum to like move us in another direction. And I think that history teaches us a lot about that, lived experience teaches us a lot about that. And like there is a path forward.
Right, I mean, not to be cynical, but when you talk about that much money, it's hard. You can put the path out there as wide as you want, and you can't make them walk down when you know there's millions and billions.
Yeah.
And they're difficult arguments on both sides. Like one that we get a lot is, how is this fair to the victims? Valid question, tough one to answer. I remember when I was young, I used to love to debate my buddy's mother. And I was good at it. I wasn't good at it. I would hammer her so hard because I have a very good ability to retain facts and articulate things. I hammered her one day and she stopped. And she says, you know what? Just because you're right, that doesn't make me wrong. Oh man, that rocked me. It stuck. And it just changed my whole paradigm shift in how I saw things. It's like, you know what? We're stuck in a situation where just because I'm right doesn't make you wrong, and just because you're right doesn't make me wrong. You know, and again, I come from the standpoint of 100% victims do deserve a lot. When crimes happen in this country and people are convicted, we spend $88 billion on the correction side, the prisoner side. What are we spending on the victim side? Little to nothing. And so now we have these people who are in prison, they're getting educations, they're taking all these programs. You know, what do we say when we send them to prison? We're gonna put you away so you can think about what you did. Guess what? They think about it, they change their lives around. So here they come 25, 30, 40 years later, they are changed people. On the other side, very little services and counseling and programs have been given to victims, and a lot of times they have not moved much from when the crime happened. And so again, there's a lot of things that need to be addressed in the system. One of it is how we support victims and you know, how we approach crime and punishment. What is the ultimate goal here? I think we've gotten too entrenched in wanting to punish. And we lost sight of penitentiary, to change, to heal. Most common today is what we refer to as restorative justice. Let's restore justice. And you know, if we find policies and programs that do lessen crime, lessen future victims, lessen future children, people going to prison, at some point we have to get off this endless circle we're running around in. And I don't want to say that, you know, victim, it has to be something that's unfair to victims, but we just need to all come together, talk about it, agree about it, and make changes.
The other thing is like the mental health system, because a lot of people are in there like who are mentally ill, who can't afford their medicine, like people are schizophrenic, for example. You know, they're committing crimes not because it's their fault, but they usually just like dump them into a prison. Because a lot of the institutions have been closed. Like I know when they emptied Byberry, how many years ago? They just opened the doors and put them on the street. And so you had all those people now homeless.
Yes, we have used prisons as a dumping place for societal problems. People with mental health, people with substance abuse, poverty, just let's put, and we can't incarcerate a way out of those problems.
$1,000,000% true.
It's a good
one.
note to transition on, because I think with what Rachel's gonna explore, we're gonna get into how some of her students dug into this topic. So we're gonna bring up Rachel's slides, and Rachel can introduce herself, say a little bit about what she does, and she's gonna walk us through what she did after the Teacher Institute last summer.
Hi everybody,
Oh.
Hi everybody, my name's Vecchione-Mitchell. I'm an 8th grade ELA and social studies teacher at Cook-Wissahickon, which is in the school district of Philadelphia. I attended the Summer Institute, and you know, throughout the Institute, we knew we were gonna be developing plans for our kids and how we can educate our students on the criminal justice system. And, you know, we had time to work, time to reflect, and when I left, I'm like, oh, this, like, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And now today I sit here and hope that I don't talk everybody's ear off, because once I started, we just haven't stopped. Oh, maybe, well, if you could go to the next slide. There we go. So,
You just tell us when to move the slide on.
sure. So when we started, the social studies curriculum for the school district, like it's limited with some things. So going into this, I knew my kids needed that background information and that backbone, because where does our criminal justice system start? It starts with laws and lawmakers. And my kids were like, I was like, what do you know about laws? And they're like, I don't know. So we started from the very beginning with the early government. After us winning the Revolutionary War, we talked about the Constitution and how that's the law of the land. And there's links in here, but for time, it's probably, yeah. So wherever you see slideshow, it's,
Sure.
it should share, because, but if not, I made it shareable. I can always make a document later and put all those links in there to be shared out. So we went through, you know, the whole process of how our Constitution came to be the law of the land. Next, students learned how a bill becomes a law. So we did a whole quick dive on it, and then something I'm really proud of is their culminating task. So they had 3 options to demonstrate their knowledge and what they picked up on how a bill becomes a law. They could make a video, they could make an infographic, or they could make a board game. One group did the video, and I have to figure out the link because it was like professional, like there was bloopers at the end. And they made a whole video about, they introduced a bill about homelessness and helping homeless people, and it went through the whole process to get it approved. There's a slideshow that a group of my kids did that was just fabulous. They used Google Slides, and it's an interactive board game, like you roll the dice and everything. And one day we just spent like 45 minutes playing the game, and I was so impressed how much they like dove into it and like how things started clicking. Next slide, please. So then we were given a bunch of books at the Summer Institute, and I love books, I read all the time. So this one really struck me, and now it's a movie, so I don't know how many people are familiar with it, but we did the Just Mercy young adult book. So Bryan Stevenson is the author. He is a lawyer, and he started the Equal Justice Initiative to help people that have been wrongfully incarcerated or to help commute sentences. So every chapter we read, there would be a formative task associated with it. So it could be questions, it could be conversations, and so again, I'll get links out, but that's a slideshow of the entire book and what we did. Next slide. So after chapter 2, I'm realizing these kids, a lot about what they know, so I should preface this, I forgot to mention this. So when I first started Just Mercy, an activity that we did here at the penitentiary that was like, wow, was all of us that were participating, we stepped to one side of the room if we knew of somebody that was incarcerated or formerly incarcerated. And all the participants, all of us were on the same side. We all knew somebody that had either been incarcerated or was currently incarcerated. So I started that off with my kids. And at first, kids were a little timid, but then they definitely separated. And I teach 49 eighth graders, and I would say between the 2 classes, all but 5 knew someone that was incarcerated or currently incarcerated. And it started some conversations. Like a lot of times kids won't openly talk about, or might mention things to me, but they're not gonna openly talk about their classmates. And something I'm proud of is that I foster an environment where kids know this is a safe space. We can agree to disagree, we can have conversations, but we need to respect one another. So like on the sidelines, it was so exciting, like hearing what they were saying, you know, pretending like I don't know what they're saying, but I hear what they're saying. And then I realized they don't know much about the death penalty. So we paused from the book for a little bit, and each student was tasked with deciding, are you for or against the death penalty? And, you know, as kids are researching, of course, they're like talking about it, and it was just really interesting to hear before they even started researching why they supported one or the other. So going into it, I definitely had a good group of kids that were like, we are for the death penalty, like, and much like you had mentioned, the victims, the families get, they feel like they have closure. So then I start seeing kids researching, and then some kids are like, well, I'm on the fence now. And I'm like, but you have to pick a side, because eventually you're gonna write an argumentative essay, and you can't be on the fence. So then we did a round table. So all the kids gathered all their information, because I'm a very fact-based person. Like, you can have your opinions, but what facts back that up? So the round table, I had come up with some facilitating questions, but the kids needed to take ownership of the conversation. So at first I'm like, who wants to go first? And then they're all staring at each other, and I'm like, okay, how's this gonna go? So I asked a couple probing questions, and then they started talking. And then there were times where I had to play devil's advocate, and then at one point I just stepped back and the conversation kept flowing. And sometimes your students just amaze you. Like, in the back of your mind, you're always like, they got this, they can do this, they can handle it. But then sometimes you're like, can they? But they definitely rose to the occasion, and it was a really cool experience, because you could tell, and they've even told me, like, I've never had a teacher that is letting us just talk like this. And I could see light bulbs and thought bubbles start going off, and some kids who were vehemently like, yes, death penalty, were starting to be like, yeah, wait a minute, I didn't think about that, or think about, all the things and the implications that go into it. So that was amazing. And as a teacher, it's my job to present facts. The students know where I stand. I'm against the death penalty. I don't think it helps anybody. It's not deterring crime. Crime rates are some states don't have the death penalty, and crime is happening at the same rate as states that impose the death penalty, and sometimes even more so. So then they wrote a 5-paragraph argumentative essay. They had to include evidence and analysis, and I was blown away. So for the in-person people, one of my students is just really passionate about human rights, period. And also my students were excited that I was sharing. They were like, did I get in the slideshow? So everyone that's here will get a copy of the essay. And I need to copy and paste it, because the link I have, I can only get to it because my student owns the work. But I was just blown away.
Before we move on, I did want to say that Kim in the chat said you were doing great with the presentation, be proud.
Thank you,
So share that with Kim.
Kim.
All right.
Hope everything's well, Kim. Okay, so I have been a long-time lover of Eastern State Penitentiary. I've been coming here for years, just roaming the halls, taking it all in. And I love art and and that's why I was like, oh my God, these pictures in the room, that's like my project. So, so when they started putting art installations, my heart was so happy, and then it just put a whole new facet to the prison too. So one of the most poignant pieces of art or art installation is installation by Cindy Stockton Moore. And at first, when you walk into the cell, you're like, oh, who are these people? And then when you read, you realize that she is giving honor to the victims. So all of these portraits, which are beautifully drawn and sketched, represent the victims of people who were incarcerated at Eastern State Pen. And there's little bios that include facts. And before we went on our class trip to the prison, I'm like, please make sure we have to get to Cindy Stockton Moore's installation. Like, I had talked about it, and I was like, it's just a humbling experience because, just like, again, you had said that, like, we put a lot of emphasis on the person committing the crime and not a lot on the victim. Like, how many people know the names of serial killers, how many people they killed, but then do you know any of the names of the victims? Do you know the lives of the victims? So as we were reading Just Mercy, Brian Stevenson again focuses people that were wrongfully accused in death row. And as we were reading the book, like, I came to this realization that people that are wrongfully accused and later exonerated are victims. They're a victim of our broken system, and nothing you can do can give them back what they lost. Most people who get exonerated get no restitution. They're not paid, and if they are, it's not enough to do anything with. So, my students were asked to select a formerly incarcerated person who was wrongfully accused and placed on death row, but later exonerated. So they needed to write an informational essay for me that talked about the person's early life, if they could find it, talked about the circumstances of their arrest and their incarceration and their conviction and what led to it. So was it institutionalized racism? Was it false witness? Was it a corrupt cop or somebody in the community that's like, I just don't like you and I want something done about you because you're a problem. So then in their essay, they wrote about the exoneration process, explained to the reader what exoneration means. And then I asked, and I'm in the process of grading these, so once I have like it printed and ready to present, I will also share that out. So they had to write their essay, but also they needed to sketch the person, the victim of this just terrible system. And because they're the victims and there's nothing there to help people when they get exonerated. There's some volunteer systems in place, but you lose your life. So this is the one time I'm like, guys, you can use AI. I'm not an artist. I appreciate it, but I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. So it also was a cool experience for them and me because together we have Adobe with the school district. So they were using AI and describing their people. And again, it was like just such a cool experience. And then having the kids come and talk to me about like what they're learning about and just their excitement. And it's just like been life-changing. Like this whole school year has been life-changing. And to me, it's so important because kids need to be informed. Kids deal with a lot more than we do, like I did when I was a kid. So it was really important that they examined these people and what they went through. And like, I'm a huge documentary watcher, so all the time I'm watching crime documentaries or prison documentaries, and now I've got the kids like hooked on them. Like, we'll talk about cases, like right now there's a Karen Reed is being retrialed, and they're like, oh, so what happened, and what do you think? So it's like they're now,
I'll talk about the Menendez Reed.
yeah, so they're now like being hyper aware of things that are happening. Next slide, please. So, we started talking about court proceedings as well, because in the book, we talk about a prosecutor, we talk about district attorneys, we talk about the jury, but I wanted to make sure they had a good handle on what happens in a court case. What rights do you have? So, we watched a documentary about plea bargains, which was really insightful, and then I was just like talking, I'm like, oh, you know they do mock trials? And they're like, we're doing it, right? And then I was like, yeah. So right now we are practicing for the mock trial. People were fighting over parts. I wanted to do jury selection, but not enough kids wanted to do the jury. Like, a lot of my kids are very like, I'll just sit back and watch, thank you. But, so they're very excited. My plan is to present this to the entire middle school, so then it can be something that they look forward to, like, oh, when we get to 8th grade, this is something special we get to do. I'm hoping, since we're approaching the end of the year, that I get some of my kids that have been super into this to write their own mock trial based on some of the court cases we've read, some of the people in Just Mercy. So, one more activity. So, I also have made it a point to let my kids know that you are a voice. I never had a teacher tell me that. I never had a teacher talk to me about voting or like, you know, they'd be like, oh, you're 18, go vote. So, throughout this process, it's developed more like just making my kids aware of you have a voice, you have rights, and just because you're a kid doesn't mean you can't make a change. So, we went back to introducing bills. So I'm in the process of trying to get local representatives to come to school and talk to the kids, but right now the kids are currently drafting bills that they would like to be introduced. So they researched, they found out who their representatives were using their Philadelphia zip code, and yesterday we just had a chat about like what's everybody thinking about, and again, impressed. And I told them, like, it didn't have to be prison related. Some kids are still on the fence what they want to do, but a big thing, and it's like kind of sad, but also happy to see that these kids want the change, is a lot of them talk about gun control and gun violence in the city. So it makes my heart happy. My kids, I know I'm gonna be sending them out to high school, and they're gonna be well-informed kids, and hopefully me informing them will help break the cycle. And then I had to include Moira because I love her.
Wow.
Oh my gosh! That's amazing!
Thank
These
you.
kids are gonna look so forward to 8th grade.
And
Yeah.
8th grade too.
Is that a history class, like, or a world, like, what is the actual title of the class?
It's a Mrs. Mitchell class.
All right.
So,
Yeah.
I use my social studies time, and because it's cross-curricular, but,
Yeah, because that's like
No,
ELA, that's.
yeah,
I'm
I'm
doing a lot of ELA in
Yeah.
here too.
so, like, nobody's really
No, actually, it's curriculum.
policing me, and the social studies curriculum to me is lacking, and for me, this is gonna make more of a difference than if I just continue teaching history. We need to know history to understand where we are
I mean, you bring in
now,
the Constitution,
but,
and you're doing all that.
right,
Yeah.
so this is a Mrs. Mitchell course.
Yeah.
Alright, questions, comments? Sylvia says you're amazing.
Thank you.
It looks like Kim logged off, but she showed her love before she left. I wanna meet your kids. Like, this is
It was a mock trial,
incredible.
yeah.
Well, I can share with you this
I
is
can't wait
one of
to
the.
vote for one of them.
I know, that's what I said. I'm like, don't forget, Mrs. Mitchell. Would you like one too?
Thank you.
Wow.
Wow.
And don't mind the corrections because they turn it in on Google and then I correct it, and some of them don't go back and adjust their corrections, so do you see?
This was an individual or group?
This was an individual, yeah.
Do I know him, her?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
Great, that's great.
this was just one of the many, but the student is always like pushes to the next level, so I'm like, I've gotta give them love.
Yeah.
But all of the essays I got were just so profound, and yeah, you just see the change, and it's amazing, so.
And so many teachers are like, how do you find ways to give assignments where they don't just go to AI, right? But if they're like passionate about
Right.
something and they want to share their own
Mhm.
voice, like that's one of the solutions, right?
Mhm. Definitely, because I didn't get like, 8th grade, they're usually like, I didn't get any, like, this was like the time that they looked forward to, especially when we were reading Just Mercy. And then they were even looking up the people in Just Mercy.
Right.
And they're like, did you know? So, yeah, I just can't say how life-changing this has been for me and hopefully for my students.
Well, I can feel it, the way that you're talking about it, and the evidence, like that the students are making this work that is like, that they're excited about, that's like real life stuff, like they're writing bills in your class.
Yeah.
Remember when I started, I mentioned the teacher who first inspired you? It's Mrs. Mitchell.
There we go.
Well, I mean, that's what you hope for as a teacher, so.
Yeah.
Just be the good in the world, I tell them.
Well, great job, Rachel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And now we're gonna turn it over to Emily, and we have, Casey's bringing up your slides. You can introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you worked on this year.
Sure. And hello, everybody. My name is Emily Bohn. I teach at Boonton High School. I teach history and AP Human Geography, but I also teach a dual credit criminal justice course. The students can receive college credit through Fairleigh Dickinson University. I've taught for over 20 years. This is my first year at this high school, and I was very excited to make the move and to teach criminal justice. So my background is I have a criminal justice family, so to speak. My father, my brother, my sister, my cousins are in law enforcement or corrections, detectives. So I had experience of growing up in that situation. And when I found out about the offerings that was here at Eastern State over the summer, I was excited to attend. I had this concern, and I know I've voiced it with you guys over the summer, like, in the world today where we're so politicized, are you like teaching criminal justice because you want to tell everyone to support law enforcement, or because you're for reform and there's no reason that you need to separate those two? And I think that's one of the important things my students have learned, and I think even talking to my family, like none of them are going to say, well, the system's perfect, right? Like, so they're going to say, yeah, there needs to be change. So that's the angle. So when I took this job, I was already a C-SPAN fellow. And prior to that, I was making lessons for C-SPAN for things like STEM related, like how STEM relates to social studies. But after the summer, I said, well, let's try to increase what they have for teachers that teach criminal justice, to expose to some of the topics we discussed here over the summer. Or how could, even lessons that you can take these topics and bring them into other courses as well, right? So not that many students take criminal justice. How can you incorporate this into a social studies class, for example? So if you were to go to C-SPAN classroom and you see lessons or bell ringers, there's a bunch of different ways you can use them. And I will start with saying I think it's a great resource, and that's coming from someone who does not like teaching. I came from schools where students were on computers from like the beginning of school to the end of school. And I'm very happy that my school discourages students from being on the computers from bell to bell. But that doesn't mean that there's still not good uses for them from time to time. So it might just be like a do now for a few minutes at the beginning of class while you're taking attendance or setting things up. If you need a virtual or substitute lesson, I had to leave school early to come here today, so my criminal justice class is doing a C-SPAN lesson on the jury system. So that, that was something that was easy to get together for them. Another thing from learning this summer is the power of the Socratic seminar. So a lot of the books that we shared out as a group, we're still sharing news articles, like current issues with the system today. But also, you know, besides just reading, if the kids have a few minute videos that they can respond to as well, that gives them, especially kids that do respond to that kind of media, it gives them other tools. It gives, when you see the different videos that are there before Congress, it gives students actual chances to see, you know, law in action, what's going on in Capitol Hill. Sometimes it's professors talking or reading about books, but also to lived experiences. It's not too hard to get, you know, your local police officer or a lawyer to talk about what's going on in the system. It's not so hard to get a lot of people who have lived experiences to come easily, so this gives that opportunity. And I'd like to say as well that, you know, if you see a lesson plan or a bell ringer or whatever on C-SPAN Classroom, you can use these from start to finish, but often like you just modify them as you need. And, you know, teachers are intelligent enough to figure out, hey, I want this video, but not this one, or this question, but not this question. So they're all, you know, they're all able to be modified. So on that, I have that QR code on the first screen, and I have it again at the end, but I have a bunch of links. So some of the sources I've made, some of them I've found, but I'm currently in the process of making a lot more that should be up for this summer. So if you go to C-SPAN Classroom, and if you look at things like criminal justice, you can also find ones on criminal law and justice resources, and also civil rights and civil liberties resources. And it will give you a bunch of videos or bell ringers. So an example of one I made over the winter, that's Coretta Scott King talking about Black women in law enforcement. So that could be something that could be used in criminal justice and history, maybe as something during Black History Month, regardless of the class you're doing, or related to Martin Luther King. So you can always find, like, you know, various ways to sort of fit some of these topics in. Next one. But I was really excited to find out I would be here when Bryan was presenting after I met him in September. So I said, where is FAMM on C-SPAN? And I found several videos, and I said, well, let's make some lessons about this. So in 2018, there was a bunch of hearings for the First Step Act. And so you can show, I included in there the link, the whole video link, it's over an hour long. But most teachers don't want to give students an hour video, nor do most teachers have the time. So that's where I come in. And I sort of preview and find clips of, like, show these 3 minutes and here's some questions for it. And you can also follow up. This is the hearing in 2018. Did the First Step Act pass, right? Like, where was there a debate? Like, what happened? So on that doc, I have a lot of questions. So some of these are not up in C-SPAN yet. They're, like I said, hopefully by the summer, but you can still use the doc and the questions I created for that. So you have the whole video, but I also showed I made some clips. So I think I put them in the slides. If you skip to the next one. So this is an example of Stephanie Nod, who was incarcerated, and when she was also pregnant. And she talks about the difference between being sentenced for crack versus powder cocaine, how being involved with someone in a nonviolent situation still put her in for a very long time. And also talks about being shackled while giving labor. I did not know until I came here recently that 1 in 28 women go to prison pregnant, and that blew my mind. And then knowing that people are literally still shackled while they're in labor, when we talk about the humanity factor, right? So if you don't want to show the whole video, I have like a 3-minute clip just of her speaking, and then just some questions. You know, what obstacles did she face? What changes did she suggest? So that's one. I also have another clip for just a few minutes. Oh, maybe I didn't show these, but I do have other ones. If you look on the doc, a clip video about family separation. This is not also saying, like, you know, besides it impacting her being incarcerated, how does it impact the family? What happens to the child once they're born in that situation? And another man who's a lawyer, Sean Hopwood, who is also incarcerated, saying, you know, about prison sentencing guidelines and how some people in very similar situations can have very different sentences and why changes need to be for that. So there's, like I said, it's about a 1 hour whole video for the FAMM hearing, but I have 3 like those 3 chunks, if you just want to show one of those as well. Also, you can find on C-SPAN, there's court cases related to that, a big one being Terry versus the US, which is sort of what Ms. Nod was speaking about, you know, the crack versus powder cocaine offenses, and also the racial implications with the sentencing that comes from that. So you can listen to the argument. You can also find lessons regarding to that as well. There's also, I don't think I have slides for this, but there's also clipped videos on that Fair Sentencing Act. So that's related to the FAMM videos as well. I just wanted to mention that those are there. So about mandatory minimums, if this act is passed, should it be retroactive to people who are currently in prison? Lots of things people forget about. So once again, those are all like 3 to 5 minute clipped videos. If you can see what questions, I want them to learn about minimums or this or that, instead of showing for the whole hour. There's also, you can find on C-SPAN the Summit on Criminal Justice. That might be worth showing just for the fact that kids might pay attention to listen to Kim Kardashian. You know, then you can get, they can watch clips of that one. And there's also another video from that Summit, and I made some clips for that as well. So this one is Ms. Topeka Sam, and she talks about what led to her arrest, and what did she learn from other women, and what does she try to do for a woman today, now that she has, this is the Lady of Ministries.
Yeah,
I wrote it on my doc. But
yeah. She runs a big organization that does criminal justice reform work.
Right. And an interesting part of her, what she spoke as well, was a difference, like, is there really a difference between violent and non-violent offenders, and where the crime, like, sometimes when it seems like it's a violent, just the, you know, what is causing it, and it really just makes, you know, us and the students pause a little bit. You know, we put these categories, and sometimes these categories don't make sense. A person with lived experiences, I may have a slide, nope, I don't have a slide for him, but it's Jose Gonzalez, and he also spoke about obstacles people face when you leave prison. We've talked a lot here about, you know, struggles with re-entry, and he gives some of his personal experiences. So I have, it's just a 2.5 minute clip. So, you know, once again, if you don't want to show an hour video to students, you can say, oh, there's 2.5 minutes, learn about struggles with re-entry, here's a few questions on it, and go on. And so now, speaking of Just Mercy, there we go. There was a House hearing just a few years ago on the juvenile justice system. So I made some clips from that, from Brian Stevenson. You know, why does he argue Congress must change this? What does he explain are the problems with putting juveniles in adult prisons? Why does he oppose having juveniles tried as adults? That video is like 5 minutes. So you can just, especially if you are watching Just Mercy, I have to admit, I saw your slideshow and I said, oh, we need to put some, I need to make a thing on him. So I found out he was in there. So you can, that's on the doc as well. It's with the links and the questions. And then I just want to show you an example. You can also find full lesson plans. So a lot of those things that, if it's a 3-minute video and a few questions, will be up as a bell ringer. But if you're like, I have 2 days, I have a week, I have an 80-minute class, I want to do a whole lesson plan, you can find their like entire lesson plans with several short videos. This is not one that I made, but this was one that was already up there. And once again, you can like make a copy of the doc and then modify it as you want to. I don't want to show this video, or I want to add a question. You know, they're very customizable. And they're easy like for students to navigate. And then after hearing Stephanie nod, I continued to search on that. So this is a very recent hearing, just from this past summer. And the Senate did have a hearing on the abuse of pregnant women in prison. And there's a lot more categories. You can look, there's videos on sexual assault in prison, more on juveniles in prison. But these are just a few examples that I just clipped. So once again, you don't have to like sift through an hour video. This one was about 5 minutes of her speaking, and you know, what choices with her pregnancy did she not have, what happened after she gave birth. Some of it's a little traumatic, so I will say, like, you might want to screen it and make sure, like, you know, hopefully your kids can handle it, and and hopefully they're disturbed by it, but I want to just like spring it without previewing it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then even Senator Dick Durbin asks her about like, what happens to the children once again after they're born. This is another one I added with the plea bargain process. So there's a whole lesson, or it's actually a bell ringer, so it's made to be short. But I just wanted to screenshot the whole thing that you would find on C-SPAN. So there's questions, you also have vocabulary, there's topics. So like I said, if you want to say like, well, I don't know if I want this one, but I want to keep looking to something in civil rights. And if you don't see it here, but if you scroll down, there's related articles. So sometimes you might want to have a follow-up assignment or just something to use that I've used for things like Socratic seminars and things like that. And I don't know if I ended it here. Right, and there's another video I found on Bryan Stevenson. So that once again, if you are reading just Mercy or you just want to learn more about the system, this is just another screenshot. And I do have the video attached as well. That was not one that I made, but it was one up there. So I wanted to show that as well. So I do have copies like of the questions. Like I said, a lot of these will be up on C-SPAN, but you can still use them with the video clips and the questions. You can put them in a doc easily yourself until the ones that aren't up are up. But if you have questions, like, is there something on C-SPAN about this topic and you can't find it, I'd gladly look for it, because if you want to know, that means there should probably be a lesson about it, and I want to make sure, you know, it's put up there. Or so if you have any other questions or ideas, that doc should have the link to the slides, but also to the clipped videos and the questions that you can use under them. So. That's what I'm up to.
Amazing. Now I'm like writing down like I gotta go there.
That's amazing. How did you get involved with C-SPAN? Like, how does somebody get to do this?
So years ago I taught AP government. So when you teach AP government, you just watch C-SPAN pretty much 24/7. Like that's, you know, what's going on, like we would start class like what's going on in the Capitol or in the executive branch today or whatever. So as I followed C-SPAN a lot, I saw that they had a C-SPAN fellow program, and that summer they opened it up to like 5 teachers.
That's amazing.
I didn't get it the first time around, but I was like, well, my students, like, it was funny how my students rallied behind me, like, do they know you? You watch C-SPAN every day. Like, so I was like, okay, so next year, like, I'm going for it again. And luckily I was accepted, and I started, and I showed them how I was actually using STEM in social studies, which wasn't, you know, sort of a niche thing. So, but now as I've sort of transitioned to other subjects, you know, you see like, oh, well, there's a need for this too. So I've stayed on board because, you know, it's great that if we can find lessons to ourselves, but if we make things available to as many educators as possible, right? Or like hear these stories from people that a lot of people wouldn't be exposed to otherwise. Like it's
Yes, because not everybody's watching C-SPAN.
right, and you wouldn't know, like, you know, who would think, you know, you put on and you hear Stephanie nod and talk about her experience, you know, giving birth, but it's out there. We just have to need someone who's like me, who's willing just to be a nerd enough and sift through the hour and, you know, find the good parts that students will latch on to.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's amazing, Emily.
And you know what, because you're doing that, you know, we know how busy teachers are, but to have that and just be able to, like, that's the way more people are gonna get reached about these topics.
And it's something that we wanna do too, like, because we show
That would be amazing.
the Justice 101 videos, and it's like, how can you find those chunks that like you could show in the classroom so you're not playing the whole entire
That could be my
thing?
job in the collaboratory someday.
Yeah, Serge and I were trying to actually do that as our project.
Yeah, okay.
We were going through the one that was about Attica, trying to figure out, like, and we were watching it, and I was like writing down the minute markers.
Right,
like,
yeah,
see this, like, this part, Serge, you could do that. So it seems like something that teachers really want, and I think that's the biggest thing about this program is that you all are making the things so that they'll actually get used, right? Because you know what your time looks like, you know what your students are interested in. So I just like, I'm blown away by both of you. It's amazing to see what you do, and I wish I could just come to your schools and hang out.
I mean, this place inspired us so much, like, over the summer, and so I think.
Yeah.
It was like
know.
a week, it was like 5 days, but it was
only
like.
4. We made it 5 this summer because of you guys.
Wasn't it? Oh, it was only
4 days.
Well, it was,
It's obviously a powerful 4 days.
Yeah.
Right, because.
we all left crying.
Bravo.
So something I forgot to mention that maybe you would be interested in is, because again, I'm a documentary junkie. I just recently got BritBox, so of course I'm watching all the criminal justice shows on there. And there's a reality show, it's 24 hours in, something like that, where, you know, they have 24 hours to decide. And so I showed my kids an episode for them to like compare and contrast what they notice is happening in England versus what
that's
we
interesting.
see. And their minds were blown because everything was so polite. Everybody was treated as a human. Nobody's getting roughed up. Nobody's being screamed at, even when the people were being difficult or intoxicated. So it was just wild to watch the stark difference.
Yeah, it makes you wonder.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we'll transition to the last thing that we're gonna do, which I will lead, and this is something that Emily and Rachel have seen before. And this is an activity that we call Defining Justice. It comes from, I learned it from this group, Let's Circle Up, and this is actually a book. It's an educator's manual for different activities that they do for restorative justice. And I first did this activity in a prison. So I'm happy to pass this around for our folks that are here in person if you want to take a look. So they first taught this to me, and it was so powerful that we've incorporated it into the work that we do here at Eastern State. It's something that we do as part of the Teacher Institute. So I'll talk a little bit about our approach with it, how we've used it, and then like how we've extended it. And I know, Emily, you also did this with your students, so if you want to chime in on anything that worked really well for your kids, I'd love to hear it. But we show this image and we just open it up to the group. What are the meanings of this Lady Justice image? So where have you seen it before? What pops into your mind?
Well, first thing I think of is like, you know, the blindfold justice is blind, but we know through our past histories, it's not. It can be very black and white, truly, and how people are treated, sentenced, like I said, the lengthy sentences and stuff, and when you call the politics in, it's definitely not blind.
Yeah. What are some other things that, thank you for that. What are some other things that people feel like they see in this image, or meanings or associations?
I remember in the summer, what I stuck out, which I never reflected on before, was that she was wearing a crown, which, you know, and if we're supposed to like democracy or whatever, like there was sort of a paradox there about that.
Yeah. I never really thought about that. I don't remember that from the summer. Yeah. Anything else?
You know, I'm always drawn to the scale. You know, we talked about the person who committed the crime and the victims. And I guess we imagine them being on each side of the scale. But they don't forever weigh the same. People change, things change. And so, you know, the balance can shift. And so justice can be fluid sometimes.
That's a good part. It's like a snapshot of one moment in time, but you know, it's too dynamic to.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the scales are connected to also like the blindfold, the idea that it's like, that like this is equal, like this is equality, this is blind. That's what comes up for me when I think about the scales of like.
Yeah, like everyone's supposed to be treated equally, but we're not.
Yeah. I mean, both of your comments like just made that connection for me. Like I never really thought about those two pieces of her imagery as related, but you guys made that connection for me today.
Can I make an observation?
Yeah.
Nobody said anything about the sword.
That was my next thought.
Yeah, me too.
Well, so the other prompts that we've used in this activity, what makes this a healthy image and what makes this a dangerous image? So what do you want to say about the sword, Bryan?
But I think when people think of justice, maybe in this room or maybe as a community as a whole, we're starting to look at it more as how do we heal, how do we restore justice, and we're not focused on the sword so much.
And the sword is that retribution that we heard about already, right? For me, that's what I see. That's like, it's also deterrence, like this is the warning, this is what could be coming for you.
I also feel like it's something that's irreversible. Because if they're using the swords,
Yeah.
whatever happens, it's permanent, whether it be a scar or death.
Yeah. Any other like reflections or comments about this image of Lady Justice that we have here today?
Why is she gold?
I don't know.
I think it depends on
It's a great question.
what she comes in, it just
Yeah,
depends
like
on who made the
Emily
statue.
slide deck had her,
Uh-huh.
she was just
Or
gonna
yeah,
see
or maybe it's
through.
just
Yeah,
bronze.
you see different versions.
Maybe it's when it was made, in the metal that was
It
available.
could have been where it's made,
Yeah.
where the building that it's on, like where is it? You know, a lot of times you see these at like courthouses.
Something I just noticed, and like I'm gonna, probably if I hadn't been through the program and been doing what I'm doing, I probably wouldn't notice this, but that the scales raised higher than the sword.
Interesting.
So, is it trying to say that, the priority is equality over the punishment, over something that can't be reversed? Or is it just a fluke that they're higher?
Maybe the punishment's there, it's
That's
there,
interesting.
but the equality should be there first, like you said.
Yeah.
Why is it a woman in the first place?
Yeah.
It was Lady Justice.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
I mean, it's very specific,
Yeah.
it's Lady
I never
Justice.
thought about that.
Yeah.
It's Lady Justice.
Maybe because at the time, we have, the Statue of Liberty, and she's referred to as,
Yeah.
I don't know.
First, I don't know how.
Yeah,
far
what's
this
her
goes back.
history?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that gets us into like other ways that we could extend this, right?
Right.
So can it be a research project for your students? Like where did this image come from? And I feel like we actually talked about that a little bit over the summer, that some people were thinking about that when they first encountered this activity. The other place that we take it in the Summer Teacher Institute is we look at this image, we have this discussion, and then we ask our group to make a symbol for justice, their own symbol for justice. How do they want to define justice? And then we make art together. And we do some collage work and some drawing where people can create their own image of justice.
Yeah, and that's what I did with our
Yeah,
students.
tell us what you did at school.
Well, I have to give props to Kim for that, because she shared, she did a big project, she made this a whole big thing with an essay and whatever. And I just took parts of it, but at the end, kids would make their own, and some of them were sort of silly and incorporated, it's an animal, because they don't want it to be a man or a woman, and.
Oh, interesting.
But,
That's
no,
interesting.
but what animal did they
Yeah.
choose? Some chose a strong bull,
Oh.
one was
That's
one was
pretty
a
cool.
seahorse, which made me think of her fluidity, because they were they sort of rode the waves, so to speak. One group made one that they hand drew, which is really interesting, and they made the blindfold so one eye it didn't cover, so they were peeking, and they still had the scales, but instead of a sword, they were holding a mirror.
Oh, I love that.
Whoa.
That's deep.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's great to see what they come up with, and how everyone comes up with something different, but it shows you what they're learning and what it makes them think about. And
yeah, so did they present them, or did they just kind of turn them in?
yeah, we put them up. They talked about them, and we put them up afterwards.
That's
There was
really
a lot of questions. People come into the room what is this about? But that's good. It started more conversations.
great.
Yeah.
Love that. So this is something that is also available on our website, in our educator resource page if people want to try it out in their own classroom. And obviously this book that Felix and Let's Circle Up wrote is for sale and is something that teachers can buy if they want to explore more about restorative justice in their classroom. And it's fully it's got all the lesson plans written down, it's got everything that you need just to kind of take it and go. So highly recommend.
Can we also note that
Yes,
Felix is also a former juvenile lifer?
Oh.
sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think during the technical difficulty stages, I shared with everybody here what some of the former juvenile lifers in the Philadelphia area have been up to. Felix Rosaldo, the author of this book, is one. He's also an adjunct professor. We also have in this unique group myself and 3 others who are senior staff at national nonprofits. I work at FAMM. We have 2 at Campaign for Fair Sentencing of Youth, 1 at Reform Alliance. We have a Pulitzer Prize winner amongst us who is also a former juvenile lifer, Suave Gonzalez. Amazing achievements and accomplishments of people who were thrown away in prison to die as children. And, you know, so the potential is always there.
And I think that, I feel like everybody heard this, but I kind of want you to say it again, that like people are, a lot of the people that you're colleagues with are like, are willing to do speaking engagements, come into schools, like talk
Oh,
about.
no doubt.
Yeah.
We talked about it.
Yeah.
If anybody wants myself or any of these other people in your classroom to share or to speak, more than happy to do so. One of the things I did at the National Life Without Parole Leadership Council is we have a speakers bureau with over 50 former lifers on it, all across the country. You know, both if we have a speaker in close proximity to an event or venue, we'll try to get them there in person, but we also have the capacity for Zoom. So again, if anybody is interested and think that your classroom can benefit from hearing from some lived experience, not only from people who, you know, committed the crimes or whatever, but found redemption too. I think that's an inspiration as well.
Well, I want to thank everybody who's still tuning in with us online. I'm so glad that we recorded this. It will be shared out on our website, through our educator newsletter. I really want to thank Bryan and Rachel and Emily for being with us here today and sharing their expertise. And I'm wishing everybody a great rest of their Teacher Appreciation Week and a great end to their school year and a good summer. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yay.